Martin Vickers.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak in this debate, and I congratulate my honourable friend for securing it, and it's quite clear that it's something that members across the House feel passionately about, and it's something that crops up every few years. I can recall speaking in similar debates over the 12 years that I've been here. There's no doubt that the cuts proposed by the BBC have led to a considerable backlash from the public. This House and the BBC staff who feel badly let down by the announcement. These cuts will severely diminish what is a highly valued by listeners and goes some way to underpin local democracy. The previous speaker from Worcester referenced his father's change to county boundaries, and he created the much hated, I have to say, County Humberside. And actually, Humberside is a swear word in our part of the country, except when you talk about BBC Radio Humberside, which is greatly valued. When considering my contribution to today's debate, I reread the representations I've received in recent weeks and realised I couldn't put the argument across better than one BBC Radio Humberside presenter and union representative speaking on behalf of the NUJ, Andy Comfort, who has been with Radio Humberside for many years. And much of what I've got to say is based on his submission to me that I received a week or two ago. The proposals involve scrapping bespoke local programmes and sharing shows between several regional stations after 2 p.m. In the evenings and weekends, these shared programmes will span an even greater region, as has already been referenced. And the late nights and Sundays will finish much earlier than currently. Currently, BBC Local Radio provides a vital service of news, information and companionship for its communities. The BBC says it will maintain local news bulletins as they are, weekdays 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. and weekends 7 a.m. to 1 p.m. However, there is no guarantee that these will be presented from the local area. The move is part of a wider plan called Digital First. The BBC plans to move journalists into local teams and regional hubs. For Radio Humberside, this is largely a positive move, in as much as radio, online and TV will work together and ensure a joined-up approach in news gathering. There will also be regional investigation teams, which has already been referenced, and that is very good. There'll be more content which airs or exclusively on BBC Sounds. BBC Sounds is great. I only wish they wouldn't advertise it what seems like every 2 or 3 minutes when you're trying to listen to a football commentary or whatever. However, this digital investment comes at a cost to linear local radio, live programmes broadcast on the traditional FM and DAB radio sets. Across England, the BBC Local Radio reaches 5.7 million people every week. Many of these listeners are not digitally affluent and may not have easy access to high-speed broadband or smartphones. They have their radio permanently tuned to their local radio station, and the flip of a button means that they're immediately in contact with that friendly voice. It is a friend in the corner. Mr Comfort from Humberside also points out that regional programmes may struggle to juggle priorities for competing demands for news. What happens, for instance, if 2 major stories happen within one region? Which one will the regional programme choose to cover? We also know that from the BBC's proposals that each local radio station will have an average of just 2 journalist reporters. At present, the average is 5 or 6. This is a serious dilution of journalistic resources in an already straitened part of the BBC's service and output. BBC management claims that these changes will future-proof BBC Local because traditional linear audiences are declining. The ambition is all for services, but mainly digital, to reach at least 50% of the audience each week. But what they're throwing away is vast swathes of local output on the radio, highly valued by audiences from all walks of life. but especially amongst the most vulnerable and marginalised in society. The majority of our listeners pay the BBC fee, and they rightly deserve better. As has already been referenced, the local newspapers are sadly in decline. In my area, we still have a daily newspaper, the Grimsby Telegraph, but the local content, like local content on the BBC, is now much diminished, and that's bad for our local communities. It doesn't allow voluntary groups, charities, churches and so on to put forward what they're doing for their local communities in the same way as it has in the past. Mr Deputy Speaker, it's clear from the representations above, as well as contributions we've heard this afternoon, that the BBC have once again made a grave miscalculation. And I, along with colleagues, asked them to reconsider this proposal. And whilst we're on the subject, I also urge them to reconsider their policy of imposing the licence fee on over 75s, which continues to be a sore point with my constituencies, and I'm sure that is the case with many colleagues. On both of these issues, the BBC has taken a misstep. I could add another misstep, just as an aside, Mr Deputy Speaker, where they've abandoned the 5 o'clock reading of the football results on a Saturday afternoon. But that perhaps pales into slightly less significance than the future of local radio. The BBC risk losing public support, which would be a real shame, because in actual fact they do a vital and valuable service which all our constituents value. So, Mr Deputy Speaker, I urge the Minister to make the strongest representations possible to the BBC. Thank you.